You know what I learned as a management point of view? Every time I told someone what to do, if it was right, I got no credit. And if it was wrong, I got the blame. So I don't need them if I'm making decisions for them. So hire good people and empower them and give them direction and then get out of their way. As a son, all of my grandparents were immigrants, to the country. People, again, are what makes America special.
Welcome to the Westbound Podcast. My name is Matthias Oertzen, founder and managing director of the Oertzen Group. Each month, we bring you international business leaders to share their personal and professional journey in North America. Thank you for spending time with us. And now, let's get to it. In today's episode, we'll be learning together about the wheels and casters industry. Quite frankly, an industry that I'm not all that familiar with. But I have the expert here to talk to us about wheels and casters and everything surrounding it. Welcome, Scott Chahalis, president of Blickle US.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I had to explain when I told my whole career has been in casters and wheels. And I always have to explain to my family when I first started this business, getting into this business, what a caster and wheel was.
Yeah.
Can you make a living? They were always worried about that. And if you start to look down, you'll start to see everywhere that you're at, there's some kind of mobility solutions, some kind of wheel and caster.
Yeah.
You could be in a manufacturing plant, you could be in a retail space, a hospital, a hotel, a restaurant, everything's on wheels.
Yeah.
And it's a multi-billion-dollar industry worldwide. And there's basically every application you can imagine and think of, from little tiny wheels that you might see on your piano to giant multi-ton custom wheels that you'll see in a space shuttle.
Yeah.
And then everything in between.
That's awesome. That's great. I'm really excited to learn more about it, learn specifically about Blickle and what you all are doing to really conquer the U.S. market. It's going to be fun stuff. Yeah. But let's start a little bit with you. I think I can't say you're the first proper American in this podcast, so welcome. And but with that last name, you probably have a little bit of different heritage as well. So maybe you just tell us a little bit about you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Both my parents were first generation Americans. My dad, where I get that Chahalis name, was Greek origin. So his grandparents only spoke Greek. And, then I grew up in an area of New York City. And that's kind of my background.
Excellent. That's awesome. And when New York City did you grow up?
I grew up in the Bronx.
In the Bronx, okay.
So,
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's one of the 5 boroughs of the inner city, as we say.
Yeah.
And I grew up there and I stayed there really right up until I was 17 and went off to university.
Gotcha. Yeah, the Bronx, and then that was also the real Bronx, right? Like at the time when you grew up there, that's
Yes.
not the current Bronx.
Before it's gentrified.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, it was kind of more Fort Apache, the Bronx, than it was post Giuliani.
Got it.
Bronx.
Okay. Gotcha.
So it was quite an interesting experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then now you are in Noonan, Georgia, right?
Yes, I live in Noonan, Georgia. It's really a suburb of Atlanta. You're only 30 minutes from the Atlanta airport, which is on the south side of Atlanta.
Gotcha. Yeah. Excellent. Very good. And tell us a little bit about how did you progress into this industry? What happened, or how did you get into wheels and casters, and how did you get to Blickle?
Yeah, I certainly didn't major in casters and wheels. So if you would have told me I would have spent my career in material handling and casters and wheels, I would have told you were crazy. After I graduated, but life takes funny twists and turns. And I can remember we were negotiating a contract with a very large company, and they had retained a consulting group. This was in Chicago. And after I got beat up by these consultants that worked us over in the negotiations for a contract, they said, well, we've been retained by this company called the Marmon Group. They're right here in Chicago. We'd like for you to meet them for lunch, please. And I'm like, you guys just told me how bad I was for all these, negotiations the past few weeks. And I certainly wasn't looking for anything. it's like a relationship in life.
Sure.
When you're not looking, that's when it gets you.
That's when you find him. Yeah, that's probably one of the only places where the Bible isn't right. When you seek, you find. It's actually the opposite of relationships.
It really is.
Yeah.
And so I met the folks over at the Marmon Group. I was impressed. And something struck out at me, and they said, we think you'd be perfect. There's a company in Jonesboro, Arkansas, that is kind of the jewel in the crown of our caster business. And why don't you go down there? We want to, at the time it was as a vice president, and no guarantees and no life. But if you do a good job, someday you can run this company, maybe. No promises. And I said, well, it sounds intriguing. So we went ahead and moved and went there. And that was my journey, my first journey in casters and wheels.
Casters and wheels.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. And then I think you told me through lunch that, working internationally, you were exposed to all the Europeans as well, right? The German, the Italian wheel and caster manufacturers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As I continued my career within the Marmon Group and then the Colson Group, I eventually managed the subsidiaries as well as the U.S. operations. So we had 20 subsidiaries all over the world. And through a combination of acquisitions and greenfield startups, we went ahead and built these businesses. It was a very decentralized approach to the marketplace, that we had. And a lot of our time was spent, out in the field with subsidiary companies.
Gotcha. There was a certain profile that you would acquire, or was it kind of that the Colson Group would look at?
We wanted it all.
We wanted it all, okay.
In other words, we looked at everything because at a certain price, anything becomes interesting, even if it's a shutdown.
Sure, yeah.
So we were we always looked for aggressive growth. And I'm more, what I enjoy more is growing. Shrinking a business can be extremely profitable.
Yeah. I think the tech industry is going through this right now.
And it's nice, but it's a lot more fun, for me at least, to grow a business and to grow it aggressively. And that was the approach that we took into the market, and that's the approach that Mr. Blickle has right now globally. So we are aligned, as they say.
Hey, that's awesome. So you had so that your journey at the Colson Group came to an end.
Yes.
And
we sold that business.
Okay.
So it was a family-owned business owned by the Pritzker family, and I worked for a gentleman named Bob Pritzker, who was just a utter gentleman, and I learned so much from him. And as his health turned, the decision was made to sell the business and then split up the assets within the family. And so I was tasked with selling the Colson Group, and we did that.
Okay.
And then after we sold the business, then we had a separation. The new financial ownership, not the family-oriented business.
So private equity bought it.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Private equy bought it. They've since the company that bought it has already sold it, and then.
The investment.
It's just a churn.
Yeah.
And I was more comfortable with a strategic approach to the marketplace and growing it and having fun doing that. And that's how Mr. Blickle and I got together.
Yeah.
We were fierce competitors globally. They beat our brains in Europe, and we beat their brains in the Americas.
We talked a little bit about this at lunch. Can you talk about this a little bit, about that acquisition of the of the one company that you were actually competing against? We were competing to buy a company called Gitel, which was a French manufacturing company of casters and wheels, and really it wasn't a very interesting company to keep manufacturing in France. At the time, particularly because of the work rules and such. Sure.
So we were competing with Mr. Blickle, and the only good asset was a company, a subsidiary company in Montreal, Canada, the Gitel company, which was more of a distribution hub. And darn it, Mr. Blickle beat us and bought the one valuable asset in all of Gitel.
Okay.
Because the rest was, which has since closed down.
Okay.
Sadly. For France and for the company.
Sure. Yeah. Interesting. So that was amongst, I guess, industry meetings and in this competitive situation. That's kind of how you got to know
exactly. We would meet occasionally annually for, at the time they called it the European Caster Manufacturers Association. And, all the big global companies would get together and tell each other lies.
Yeah.
And we would sit there and you got to know your competitors. And, what stood out with Mr. Blickle and the Blickle company, were really shared values in terms of how we approach things, doing things properly in every way. Plus, Reinhold has a great sense of humor, and friendship was born, in this competition over many years, which led us to today, which is, the adventure we're having with Blickle US.
Yeah. So what happened then is, I guess you just got a call knowing you were available.
Yeah, right? When I separated and my contract was such, after my non-compete period, anyone that knows Reinhold Blickle knows how persistent he is and how wonderful he is in regards to how he treats people. And he was like clockwork. He would call and say, you're too young to retire and you need to do something here. We need to do something, figure something out.
Yeah. And
when the non-compete period was over, we decided to go ahead and really go big.
Interesting.
In the U.S.
Yeah. So tell me about the state of Blickle U.S. or North America, as you come in. Like, how was it set up?
Well, it was really, to me, a trading company. There would be primarily, I'll call it European, particularly German OEM manufacturers who maybe had a U.S. subsidiary that needed to buy some casters. So what would happen is the Blickle caster would be sold into Blickle Canada, because that was the only footprint that they had in North America, up in Montreal. And then that product would then be shipped into the United States. So it was a very, very small market, satisfying existing Blickle customers, global customers in the U.S.
And when you say training, what do you mean by that? Like, you were training the customer itself on it, or you were training salespeople to support distribution, or what do you mean by training setup?
Well, fundamentally, they had a sales organization in the U.S. with salespeople who would go out and represent the Blickle brand and be managed from Blickle Canada.
Okay.
So obviously, I always like to use the expression, we're all in the delivery business.
Yep.
No matter how good your product, no matter how good, if it's too late, if it's not there on Wednesday as you promised, you'll not keep customers for long. So the first decision was made is we needed to have a physical presence in the U.S. with stock, with inventory. And, obviously it would be better covered in the U.S. with a U.S. team than trying to do it through Canada. It just was inefficient.
Yeah.
So that's when the decision was made to go big. And Mr. Blickle has made that decision to do that and to make significant investments to build up our U.S. subsidiary.
Yeah, and that leads us to Noonan now, right? Like where?
That's right. Yeah. So the first thing we did, it's kind of an old joke. We had more company cars than we had salespeople when I started, and it was a very, very small office in a bank building. Yeah. As a trading company, more or less, it had been around for many years, but it was a small entity.
Got it.
And the decision was made. Let's go ahead and put a footprint in.
Now things are connecting. You were saying trading company, and I understood training company. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to throw you.
That's right. No, it's okay. I was wondering.
Got it. Well, I went with that, right? Yeah,
right,
exactly.
I kind of steered it a little bit.
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense. Okay. That's
and so it was more of the trading company, but then the decision was made, okay, let's go ahead and have a physical presence in the U.S. We decided to, after a lot of, as I'm sure you're well aware, the amount of due diligence that goes in when you're
site selection,
when you're doing a site selection, when you're going out and then finding the site, and then going through literally all of the general contractors, the architectural firms, so a lot of effort was put into that, and we decided on a place called Noonan, Georgia, which is in Coweta County. And that's where we relocated the company for Blickle US.
Yeah, I remember, being in the German community and then being a native to Atlanta. I remember some of the announcement coming through the German American Chamber of Commerce, seeing the first pictures and all this kind of stuff. And it's a quite impressive campus that was built. Maybe you can...
It really is. I mean, we have customers come into Blickle US pretty much every week.
Right.
And we really strongly encourage them to do it because we have to sell a premium solution. The Blickle product is the best casters and wheels you can use. The price might be high, but the cost is low. So we have to then bring customers in and explain to them the value proposition of Blickle. Why our price might be 20, 30, 40% higher, but why our cost could be 20 or 30% lower.
I can imagine I see a lot of East Asian competition. What are some of those things? Are they can they take more pressure? Are they fire retardant? What are some of the, what would set up differentiate a really high quality wheel from a lesser alternative?
Yeah, I mean, the durability of it, how long will it last, is critical. For example, we offer the longest warranty in the industry worldwide.
Interesting.
Because we have confidence in the product. So what we do is we bring customers in, and technically we explain why we have a better mousetrap. And the engineering reports are quite impressive. The testing we do is quite impressive. We do that in the product training center. So we go over and explain this in great detail. And then we'll also talk about the financial justification of why we're lower cost. Once we do that, then we bring them to the customer experience center. And the customer experience center, all of the products we talked about, why it's a better mousetrap, well, now they can go hands-on and feel and touch. When we talk about ergonomic solutions and we talk about ease of rollability, these things are very compelling. And even the management teams and the sophisticated executives we bring in, when they get out in the customer experience center and feel it and touch it, and it's not just an abstract report, whether it be engineering or financial, it really cements the sale. Because then they get it. They understand why. Today's environment, you have all kinds of health and safety issues, workers' comp issues. Quite candidly, people aren't going to push 2,000 pounds on a cart anymore, or they're going to demand a safe type of product with different braking and locking solutions and things like that. So it's been quite compelling for very large customers who understand cost versus price. They are flocking to us at Blickle right now because we have the technical, the engineering team, the product, to be able to explain why we have this better mousetrap and to justify it.
I bet part of that is also keeping a large inventory in the United States, right?
We have to. It's the classic push-pull, right? You never want too much inventory, and you can't have not enough.
Right.
So finding that mix is always interesting, particularly with our product line, where there are literally tens of thousands of different combinations of wheels, bearings, brakes. All these different options you can put on it because basically anything that rolls, we manufacture. So it becomes a balancing act. But, again, at the end of the day, we're the delivery business. And we may have the best product in the world, but if it's not ready and available when you say it is, you will lose the sale. And oftentimes we hear price. And you're right. In the U.S., a lot of the product has been outsourced over the years, sadly, particularly as different financial ownerships come into these companies. The first thing they do is outsource. Right. And they shift production, and it's primarily to China. So a lot of the product isn't made in the U.S. anymore, sadly. And, that becomes both a problem, but also I look at it as an opportunity. Okay, because we have a great product, but we have to also be able to deliver the product. And that was the commitment we made with setting up the U.S. headquarters in Noonan and building the plant. So what we'll do in our plant is we'll assemble all this product, all these components, and we put our little toe in the water with machining and the wheels and things to minimize inventory.
Sure.
But I think there's a certain inevitability of having to manufacture in the U.S. No different than, let's say, the German automobile manufacturers like VW and BMW and Mercedes, who have now, they're all manufacturing of course, also mostly in the Southeast.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great region for making this happen. The labor force
Yes.
is as good or better than some other regions, and it's a right to work situation. I think that attracts a lot of employers, lots of incentives as well. But that's really good to hear that that's a long-term plan too. So the land was acquired, building was built, and there's plans to build it out. And
Mr. Blickle will need to make this decision, but I think there's a certain inevitability to continue significant growth.
Yeah.
In the U.S., you really have to be all in. Mm-hmm. You can't be a little bit pregnant. Yeah. Either you make the decision to be all in or not. And right now we're growing dramatically from that little sales office. And in a few short years, we're already the number one subsidiary of Blickle.
That's fantastic.
Of the 20. Yeah. So the growth potential in the U.S. is just phenomenal.
Yeah, I think that's so many times where, all our client base is European manufacturers. And they underestimate it's not just the geographical size of the United States, but the market potential. I do believe that the U.S. is about 8 times the GDP than Germany. Someone check my numbers, but I think it's about right. And just I know this for a fact, just California is as big an economy as the entire country of Germany. So there's so much opportunity. And I think that's also one thing that really differentiates and it's changing in Germany, but historically speaking, Americans always think about, okay, we have this widget, we're selling it in Georgia. When are we doing it in the Southeast? When are we going East Coast? When are we going West Coast? When are we going nationwide? There's immediately this mindset and thought to kind of go that direction. I think it really behooves a lot of German companies to think more that way. If you end up kind of going that direction, that's another thing. But really think about, how can I get nationwide coverage? How can I?
Yeah, I think that's true. Especially when I look at Europe, there's growth there and it's phenomenal. But at the end of the day, the growth rate is slowed. And, in the U.S., the potential is phenomenal. I say this not as an American. I say this as a business person.
Yeah.
You've got to be in the U.S. And you've got to be all in. You can't be a little bit pregnant. You're either going to be in the market or out. And the potential for growth, as I see, is dramatically higher in the U.S. going forward than, let's say, other geographic parts of the world.
Yeah. What's interesting to me also is that, it seems like there's a lot of mutual trust between you and the German leadership.
Well, there is. Again, everything comes down to trust to a large extent. We're all capable people, and that's the easy part. The hard part is being bold like this, and I think having a relationship and a history together has certainly helped the situation accelerate. But the boldness of Mr. Blickle, I'm sure there were some interesting meetings in Rosenfeld, Germany, when we talked about the U.S. and making these big, bold investments, and him doing it. And even buying a company in China, a subsidiary company. This is to complement the brand. The Blickle brand is the premium brand in the industry. Obviously, I'm partial, but it's the best product in the caster and wheel world. And that Blickle brand should be treated with respect, and to ensure there's no degradation of the brand. So what we did is we had a 2-brand strategy, because everyone in the U.S. likes to do one-stop shopping. So if you just have the super premium Porsche and you only sell that, you're probably going to lose a lot of Volkswagen sales. So, in the U.S., people want to shop. They want to do one-stop shopping. So we have our approach is we sell Blickle first, second, and third as the premium product. But not everyone has a value equation like that. And so we had another brand called Pegasus, which is the Chinese company, and that's more of the non-metric type product. And now we go to the customers, any customer. We have a full breadth of product offering, and we can supply soup to nuts in any way we want.
That's fantastic. And also, I mean, you needed the imperial alternative.
We do.
I mean,
Right. A lot of it was not just the brand management issue, which is really critical from a marketing point of view, but also the fact that most of the product that we manufacture, Blickle manufactures everything in Germany under one roof. It's one of the most impressive operations. As I was mentioning to you at lunch, being a competitor Blickle for so long, when I first saw the plant, I thought we were behind, but we were really behind. I mean, the automation and the technology and the investment, it's the most, and I've been to virtually every caster company worldwide in my career. It is the creme de la creme, the Blickle operation, and content always wins. So the content was there. We just had to figure out how to get to the market in the U.S. because the approach has to be uniquely American.
And that's, what a wonderful topic. I mean, I'm 100%. So many of our clients have, through a highly competitive European environment, German environment, I mean, it's a highly competitive, in order to maintain, small growth margins, right? You come up with the ever new product and variant of this and that, also OEM driven a lot of times also, right? But anyways, they come to the United States with this catalog full of variants of their product and just confusing the U.S. market, right? They're confusing the U.S. market, often being the top price. So you really got to, if you want to sell an Apple iPhone, you got to position the Apple iPhone, right? And so it seems like that the management there was very smart in seeing someone like you, and then just giving you the reins and letting you set it up how it really needs to be set up.
Well, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, there are wonderful constraints in place, of course.
Sure.
But it all comes down to trust.
Yeah.
It always does.
Yeah.
And trust is not given, it's earned. And it takes a long time. And I think the relationship that Mr. Blickle and I had before was mutual respect as competitors. We would, he's the epitome of a gentleman. And we like to operate the same way. Culturally, I wouldn't operate any other way. You tip your hat if you lose, and then you look in the mirror and figure out how do you get better. But, if we were, let's say, to conduct business in Germany with the American approach, we would fail. And I think the same is true if there's not an adjustment in some way, not with the character of the company and the beliefs and the core principles of a company, but if you don't incorporate the uniqueness of a given geography, we found this all over the world, then you're not going to succeed with that subsidiary company.
Working for a German manufacturer, and then what are some of those things that you have observed that you say, okay, we really need to adjust this. This won't work here?
Well, I think the biggest thing is speed to market.
Okay.
We were kidding at lunch. The old expression, ready, aim, fire. The U.S. mentality is fire, ready, aim. And you could have the right answer and have the most wonderful engineering report known to man and have it 99.99999, but that answer, albeit if it's right, if it's not delivered with more quickness to market, then the person who has it 80% right is going to take that business. Okay. Yeah. And I think that's where the mentality difference, we complement each other. The sense of urgency in the U.S. Is vital. There's no patience. We literally, if we can't deliver within 24 hours, the solution, no matter how good your product, you won't get it. And what we found too, if you can deliver it, price becomes secondary.
Yeah, that's very true. That's something I have observed. It's my experience has been also that yes, there's a lot of people that will look for the lower price version, right? The very price driven decision making, right? But then there's a lot of organizations in the U.S. that are insensitive to price to a certain extent. Just if they know what they're getting, it's quality. It's helping me. And they'll move forward. And time plays a huge role in that. Yeah.
And we don't make a value decision on the customer.
Sure, they do.
Because, like for example, in our world of material handling, you may have a customer who takes a cart and just wheels it to the corner and never moves it. Well, that application is going to be a lot different than, let's say, something that is running 24/7 on an AGV and you can't have downtime. So, we want to present a solution in totality to any of their material handling needs, right? So to do that, that's again one of the reasons why we have multiple brands, and that's one of the reasons why we never look down on a customer. And we've seen over the course of our career, really the person who doesn't understand cost today could understand it tomorrow. And I think now, especially what we're seeing with ergonomic-driven solutions, is you have a lot of problems with hiring. You can't find people. So, part of it is, no offense, people aren't going to put up in the plant environment with pushing around 1,000 pounds or having an unsafe environment with with having a braking option or a locking option and such. So, if you want to have less turnover with employees, if you present these ergonomic solutions where something's easier to push and pull or have a braking solution, guess what? You have less turnover. And I think the people who and the companies that are on the forefront of this thinking are the companies we really want to work with, and we're seeing a huge demand for satisfying customers that understand this and are looking for solutions.
I mean, retaining blue collar in a manufacturing environment, this is what's going to make or break this country in the next 10 years.
100%. And all we do is go into factories. This is the most fun part of the job for me, because you could be in a hospital one day, you could be in a meat packing plant another day, you could be in a automobile manufacturer another day, food manufacturing. So you see every different type of industry. But the one common thread is, if you solve the problems with ergonomic and material handling solutions through caches and wheels, guaranteed not only will you have happier employees, you'll have less turnover. And companies are realizing that now, and they're willing to make the investment, because the investment, it's not significant. It really isn't in the scheme of things when you think about an injury, what the cost of an injury is with a back injury, let's say.
What would you say, like on average, what's the price difference, like rough average? Are you telling me?
Rough average, we're about 30% higher. The Blickle product.
So that's really in the scope of things.
It's sellable, and we welcome customs and specials. We want the biggest, most difficult challenge. That's what makes life interesting. And it's funny, we'll be at trade shows and we'll literally have competitors. We'll say to someone who comes over to the booth, hey, how did you find us? What did he goes? Oh, so-and-so, the competitor sent us over. They don't want this kind of complicated engineered solution. We welcome that. We look at it like a challenge. And if you can solve the toughest thing, then the odds are you can satisfy everything else.
Absolutely. I want to go back to a point you made earlier. The differences between German and American culture. It's I think the speed to market to some Germans can be perceived as a lack of thoroughness.
Absolutely correct.
Like where they feel like, okay, well, that this is all. Going a little bit too fast, let's not get ahead of ourselves, all this kind of things. Also, Americans are often perceived as, okay, there are all these browbeating, what do they used to call them? Carpetbaggers, I think is what they call it. Like that kind of thing, and it's, where really the truth is, if you could merge the two, but I've seen also, let's take the flip side of this, right? I've seen so many German companies come to the United States, hire salespeople, have us find them salespeople, and then, now go sell. They actually go do something, get some good opportunities, and now they don't have the manufacturing capability in Germany to even please the European market. I have candidates calling me back after 18 months, 24 months, hey, I'm going to go look for another job because I can't make commissions. I've sold this contract, but I'm being told the U.S. is second in line. So I think that's the downside on maybe that thoroughness, or being too conservative, or not using external capital to make certain things happen. I've seen American companies be way more flexible with that as well. Also, to an extreme, negative again, right? But willing to facilitate their growth through external capital.
That's been, it's a big challenge, right? Because the mentality is different. My father used to say, different doesn't mean better or worse. It just means different.
True.
And the mentality of what we've seen, particularly from European companies in the U.S., even our subsidiaries that I managed in the past, is they would be slow to market. They knew the answer. Okay, in the case of Blickle is the best manufacturer in the world of casters and wheels, and we just needed to act like that here. We have solutions, and the mentality is don't rush it so much. Don't shoot from the hip, be data driven. But at the end of the day, when you think you're there and you've got something, be decisive.
Yeah.
Okay. And whether that even includes investment, if you know that you need to manufacture in the U.S., don't wait 10 years to make a decision because the market will pass you by.
Yeah.
Again, it's this mentality difference. Listen, every American is optimistic. We joke.
Yeah.
I mean, our budgets, our plans.
To a fault.
It's the reverse. It's almost like we forecast above what we should. Even when and by the way, that's another important difference. For example, we build our plans from the bottom up. That's unheard of in Germany. What do you mean? I want the local regional sales manager to quantify how they're going to grow and what level. And I want them to own that number. I don't, as opposed to me saying, here's what your plan is. You know what I learned as a management point of view? Every time I told someone what to do, if it was right, I got no credit. And if it was wrong, I got the blame. So I don't need them if I'm making decisions for them. So hire good people and empower them and give them direction and then get out of their way. And if you have success and the numbers are right, wow, keep investing, keep asking them what other capital expenditures need to happen and double down. And if the results aren't in, then you stop.
Yeah.
And then you alter direction a little bit. But this is a mentality difference that I found. And again, it's not better or worse. It just is. Yeah. It just is. Yeah, exactly. It's such a competitive market. Almost everything in our field right now, the majority of the casters and wheels are all made in China. I mean, literally, it's dramatically, when you go to the bottom level, it's not 30% or 40%. It's like 70, 80%.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay. So that could either be a crutch or an excuse, or it could be, a strategic, exciting challenge.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Do you see an influx of, obviously Blickle will be an example eventually, right? But do you see other manufacturing returning to the U.S. to make this?
Yeah, part of it is driven, of course, with the geopolitical influence. Like, for example, we had China tariffs put on during the Trump administration.
What were they for
25%.
Okay, wow.
So 25% China tariff was put on. And that, to a certain extent, then incentivized return of domestic manufacturing.
Sure.
Of course, I've always looked at it when you control when you manufacture, you control your cost and your quality. You're in the driver's seat. You have no one to blame if it goes south, and you control your own destiny. So I am really leery, and I'm more comfortable in strategic ownership because they're willing to understand that concept. And Mr. Blickle has done it beautifully.
Well, and he's a bit ahead of his time, if I may say.
He is.
When did you guys build the plant?
We 2018, 17.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. This is people are talking about this now. Ramped this up a year ago. So a good 4 or 5 years ahead of it.
Even during COVID, when it hit, they were going through a dramatic expansion in Rosenfeld. Okay, so when there was uncertainty about COVID and the world's ending, particularly that second quarter of 2020, they were doubling down and expanding.
Yeah.
And of course, they're going to benefit greatly because when you control your cost and quality and you manufacture it, you will always win if you have a good team. Always. And we have that great product content, and we can connect all that now to the customers in the U.S.
That's fantastic.
So it really is exciting. Again, it's a lot. more fun to grow a business. And we try to hire in people who have a mentality where they want to grow. We want people to come in who aren't looking for a job, but are really looking for a career.
How are you going about that? I mean, there's lots of changes through COVID, you know.
Very much.
Yeah, like maybe talk about those a bit, how you're counteracting those.
When people ask me what my title is, what do I do in the company, I say I'm in HR, human resources.
Yeah.
Because the most important thing for any company, and having bought and sold many companies, we were only buying, or did greenfields, whatever, the most important element of the value of a company, it wasn't goodwill, it wasn't the stock, the inventory, it wasn't the customer list, it was the people. The people are the most valuable asset for any company. So we spend an inordinate amount of time hiring. I interview even, when we had 3 people or we have now, 45 people.
Right.
Every person I want to have a final discussion with before we hire to see if they fit in culturally with the mentality and the team that we have in place.
Yeah.
The most important thing any manager of a company can do is to be actively involved in the hiring. Just don't seed it out to others. I've seen 1 million good CVs like you wouldn't believe. And then I've seen the most wonderful CVs in the world fail miserably.
Yeah.
So it's really getting involved and rolling up your sleeves with the interview process, the recruitment process, and that has to be a big priority.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's from the top down. I mean, your people know how you feel about it, so they will act.
Exactly. Yeah. And everyone, because we've all sat across the table when we were interviewing for a job, let's say. So I always look at things as very reciprocal. It has to be a win-win. It's like a marriage. It has to be, some days they're going to be 70-30, some days maybe for me 90-10. But, or 10-90.
Yeah.
But it has to be over time 50-50, sure. Right? So we want it to be a great fit. So when someone is brought onto our company, I use the old joke, on a scale of 1 to 10, how interested are you in your job?
Yeah.
If it's not an 11,
yeah.
I ask them, why isn't it 11? Why is it an 8? Why is it a 7? Where's the gap? Help me understand. Because we want to be, the success of Blickle or any company is going to be the people.
Yeah.
And we always try to hire people that are smarter and better than ourselves.
Yeah.
And when they do a good job and the results are coming in, I've seen actually some strategies. I'll speak very specifically within, let's say, a regional sales manager.
Sure.
We can go to market many ways. We can go sell direct to an OEM. We can sell through an integrated supplier. We can sell to a mom and pop dealer, distributor. We sell to them all. We force the regional sales manager to make a decision how to get to market. Because what we found is even the geography sometimes is different. Maybe there's, a better distribution in a certain city or state.
Right.
Maybe there's super weak distribution. Maybe there's a lot of integrated suppliers. And so we force them to make a decision, and then we hold them accountable and responsible for these decisions. So you have to
choose one of the verticals, so to say.
Right. There are many fingers to market, and we say, listen, how you get there, here's success.
Right.
Right in the middle of the table where my fist is.
Right.
I've seen regional sales managers take an approach that I would not have done. They go left and right, but they get to that middle of the table, my fist in the middle here with success.
Right.
As long as it's legal and ethical.
Sure.
How they do things.
Yeah.
I've been proven wrong on a few things. So again, we empower people, we hold them responsible and accountable. And I think that mentality works really well, particularly for hunters, people who want to grow the business. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, you've so hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's the A-typeness that comes with the true sales hunter, right? They are self-motivated. You usually don't have to talk to them about quotas. They feel embarrassed that they don't hit their quota. They want to increase their income. They're usually money-driven people. And if you pair that with freedom within reason, right? That's great. Should.
That's our mentality, and it's a combination too. We even one of the first things we did is change the compensation plan to a model I was really familiar with, and that motivates you. You don't want people to be worried about being able to put food on the table for their family and have them be totally commissioned. But you also want to be able to have a high ceiling, and based upon the results.
Yeah, that's
and again, you want hunters who are going to be out there, working within established parameters that are understood and clearly communicated. Okay, and then empower them to go forward.
Do you cap your commissions plans for sales guys?
We do, only because in the beginning, what we found is, there's so much uncertainty, with things.
Yeah.
But our goal is to have everyone make the highest.
Okay, yeah.
So, it keeps going up and up and up and
Got
up.
it, okay. Yeah, so it gets adjusted as you go.
We want the most highly compensated people within our field. Okay, but they have to earn it, just like we all have to earn it every day.
Sure, yeah. So what's the plan for Blickle? Manufacturing potentially in the future?
Well, you've got to ask Mr. Blickle that question. but at the end of the day, I think clearly we're out of space.
Yeah.
This plant on phase 1 that we completed really was supposed to last us quite a few more years. We are out of space.
Good problem to have.
It is. It's a problem, nevertheless. Bad planning.
Yeah.
Right? I'm reminded of that sometimes. Bad planning. But it's a good problem. It's an opportunity.
Yeah.
So I think further expansion is absolutely required and necessary, here. And then what's the next step? The next step, to me, there's an inevitability of bringing, product to be manufactured in. The Blickle product will always be manufactured in Germany.
Yeah.
But for example, there is a drive for made in the U.S., and at the end of the day, having some flexibility with being able to make certain parts and have a solution. No different than the automotive manufacturers have proven over the course of decades now. There's an inevitability that something has to be made here in the U.S. So that decision will be made soon.
You're pretty skilled in acquiring other companies, as you have shown at the Colson Group. Is that something where you see some targets?
You have to. Yeah. I mean, to me, I think, I don't know if we were talking about it at lunch or even during this conversation, but any company is worth buying at any price, at a certain price, excuse me. So, for example, the only exception to that was Gittel probably, who could have been had for €1, but you almost had to, have lifetime employment for 350 people with a plant that was unoperable.
That's
tough,
yeah.
But generally speaking, there's a great consolidation going on in the marketplace, maybe not only in material handling and casters and wheels, but many industries. And the market is moving very, very quickly. So, we always look at companies that are for sale, because anything from shutting them down and buying them to expanding in them are interesting.
Sure.
But also organically growing and doing it yourself has a certain amount of appeal too.
Yeah.
I personally think it's a hybrid type situation. But if you're interested in growth, you have to aggressively pursue both paths. And this really goes into let's say the American mentality.
Yeah.
New products, new products, new products. That's a mantra that is so compelling, particularly in the U.S. And sometimes there's sizzle and sometimes there's steak. For example, in the world of Blickle, we have a product called the Ergo Move, which is basically an electronic caster.
Okay.
So you have zero push pull, on it. That's really revolutionary. So that's really
what kind of application would you use that kind of caster?
Well, let's say, for example, if you have a super high weight and you want to go from 4 operators to 1 operator, and maybe it's in a tight environment, the Ergo Move, what makes it so special is you can retrofit it on any card.
It's a retrofit.
Yes.
Okay, that's very good.
So it was designed by the Blickle team in Rosenfeld to be able to basically integrate into your current system without a cart design. Pretty cool.
Yeah, that's very cool.
And that's really been taking off for us because if you're having heavy loads, as we talked about, not only is it a safety issue, a health and safety issue, not only is it an issue for employee retention, because when employees leave, what we find when we do due diligence, when they leave, sometimes it's the work environment.
Yeah, I mean, I had 2 clients over the years that were operating manufacturing plants in the Southeast and didn't have climate control. I mean, you know how hot it gets here, you know,
Yes.
and then all of a sudden, so I can totally see how that's important.
It really is, and you have to ask the employee, right? And that's one of the reasons why when we bring people to our customer experience center, and all of a sudden they push, let's say, a cart with the weight,
Sure.
with the current incumbent caster, and then they go to our cart. And push it and go over obstructions and things like that and the testing.
So you have all that set up?
We have it all set up.
That's great.
So when we go over the engineering report and the commercial financial reasons of why our cost is lower in our product training center, then we take them to the customer experience center and everything they're using is staged and out. And then what we recommend is out, not only on test equipment, but practically to push around on different floor surfaces or different, obstructions or different ramps.
Yeah.
And boy, they really get it then.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Because when you're feeling it and touching it, you go, wow, that's what my employees are pushing.
Right.
I can't even move it. How could they do that every day?
Yeah.
Or wow, we're having all kinds of
I didn't even think
back
about this,
injuries.
to have a decision maker, actually push to the cart themselves and then make the connect.
Especially with the executives, we try to get people who maybe have never pushed the cart.
Sure.
They understand numbers beautifully, right? They're very intelligent. they can they get the reports. Even the engineering teams. But when you get someone practically to put their hands on something, then they understand what their workers are going through.
That makes complete sense. Yeah.
And the hit rate's almost 100% then. Then it all comes together. That's what our goal is, because we're selling a premium solution. And people are not afraid of buying a premium solution.
No, I mean, otherwise Apple wouldn't exist, or, I'm pretty sure that Porsche is it's probably the largest market in the U.S. for Porsche, I would assume.
I would think so.
With as many Porsches as you see in Atlanta, I would.
Well,
I guess
I'm a Taycan guy, and so you like to kind of, everyone wants, right, a certain car, but aspiration is really important too. We've had customers before that have come to us and say, you know what, we can't afford that Blickle solution. We would say, you can't afford not to use the Blickle. And then we've used the Pegasus solution, the other brand, to get our foot in the door. That has led to Blickle sales. Because aspirationally, they start to get a confidence level, and then they realize for the cost of a latte, they can solve a problem on their floor and maybe have less worker comp claims or less employee turnover.
Excellent. This is very interesting. Very good. A couple of things I wanted to ask you also about your personal life a little bit. I saw that you're quite accomplished traveling. I think on your LinkedIn bio, you're talking about 50 countries that you have visited. Have you done most of this professionally, or some of it personally?
Well, I mean, I love to travel, but it was mostly professional. Because, we had so many subsidiaries in my past life before Blickle, all over the world. And we started up companies all over the world. Sure. And so a lot of time was spent in obviously North America, South America, Asia, Europe. The only place I really hadn't gone is Africa. And I have that on my list personally.
Okay. Yeah.
Someday. And it's a global marketplace. And the other comment I'd make is I know sometimes there's a lot of bashing going on in the U.S. about China now. China's not going anywhere. Yeah. China is a manufacturing powerhouse, and they shouldn't. If you're going to be a global player, not only do you need to be in let's call it North America, the U.S., you really need to be in China too. Yeah. There's an inevitability of this. So if your goal is ultimately global growth, I would just say I really believe that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see. I follow a couple of economists, and they talk about birth rates and how that's going to impact.
There's no question. Demographics play a critical role in future growth. And of course, the U.S. has a great high birth rate. We also have a very robust immigration, policy, and that's going to certainly fund more and more growth. In the U.S., there's it's such a big country. I mean, the U.S. is far from being a mature market.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. And many of the, you spoke about immigration policy. I think that would be the key to a healthy reset on immigration policy, would be the key to fixing our labor shortage as well. I think you've got all of Central and South America, including Mexico, knocking on the door, wanting to come here and looking for the American dream, right?
Yeah.
And if we had and I think they actually quite fit the folks in the United States quite well as the way they operate, and so that is something that really politicians should take a look at. I mean, also, I think Mexico is going to explode. The whole nearshoring.
No question. I think it. And again, as a son, all of my grandparents were immigrants. To the country. People again are what makes America special. Mm-hmm. We Americans like to complain about everything, and it's not perfect and such. But I don't see anyone leaving America. What I see is lines that are endless trying to get into America.
Yeah, that's very true.
Because of the hope. And a lot of the cultural values are very similar. There's a great assimilation that occurs in a relatively short period of time, particularly with the immigrants we have that come from Latin America. Mm-hmm. So I'm really bullish on the U.S. in the future and demographically speaking. Yeah. And I know, listen, China's fighting the one-child policy that has since ended. Mm-hmm. The birth rates are, it's a very controversial topic, but at the end of the day, the more the merrier. Yeah. And I think, it's the great part of life, and it's the great part of growth. Mm-hmm. And you cannot shrink your way to greatness as a country or as a family. Yeah,
that's very true. I absolutely agree with you. I think on that note, we maybe end the podcast. I mean, this is a great summary.
It's been great, and I've enjoyed talking with you, and it's been enjoyable, and I hope all of your listeners find it of interest.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I learned more. I had no idea what is all to Wheels and Caster, the entire industry, and I appreciate the education. At this point, we always like to ask a little bit about, are there any social media channels that you use as a company or as a personally that you would like to promote?
Yeah, it's funny. Personally, I'm not a big fan of Facebook, and everyone kind of is, and I find out too much about my neighbors, and I kind of go, I wish I didn't know that. But from a business point of view, we started doing social media quite a bit as a way of communicating. Mm-hmm. I think the old method of whether it's news or information is going to change dramatically, of course, not only with artificial intelligence, but right now, how we get to market with social media. Mm-hmm. So we use, for example, LinkedIn quite a bit to share our message in a short, concise way of different products, different applications. Like, for example, wind energy. Mm-hmm. It's such a narrow topic, but here we are making these amazing polyurethane multi-ton wheels, specially for that. Well, there's almost every special application out there. Mm-hmm. So you can find us on Instagram, you can find us on Facebook, you can find us on all the social media. But if there's any interest for any of your listeners, in terms of questions, whether they be technical or commercial, I would welcome anything. You can reach out to me personally on LinkedIn. We have a whole team. We respond back with lightning speed to any kind of inquiries, of any nature, again, whether they be commercial or technical.
Awesome. Very good. Well, thank you again, Scott. It was really good. A great conversation. We'll do it again. And to all our listeners and watchers, please like, subscribe, and comment on our podcast. That'd be great. Thank you. Bye-bye.